Hi, friends, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Before we get started, I did want to just put a quick disclaimer out there that this episode includes a brief mention of suicide. It's not the focus of this conversation, however, but we just wanted to give a heads up for anyone who might be sensitive to that. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Anniversary Podcast. I'm Mary, and this is a space where we celebrate another year, reflect on what it's taught us, and talk honestly about what it really takes to keep choosing each other. Anniversaries aren't just about marking time, they're about honoring growth. So today I'm here with Kaitlyn and Tommy. I'm so excited to have them here because they are getting married soon.
It's true.
And you guys you've known each other longer than you've been dating. Yeah. So you guys met at a Teton excursion kind of thing. Yeah. So walk me through first when you met each other to the point of you guys becoming an official couple.
Okay. You want to take this one or you want me to?
Go for it.
Okay. So we met on a camping trip through a Facebook group. Went camping with 60 other strangers in the middle of the Tetons. It was great. When Tommy very first rolled in, he rolled up on a motorcycle, which I thought was really cool. And so I thought that was super fun. And then...
Were you attracted to the motorcycle piece?
I was very attracted to the motorcycle piece, if you can't tell. My family all grew up riding, so I'm used to being on a bike, and I thought that was really cool that he just, showed up there and came on the bike. Lonesome. Yeah, so big confidence piece right there. And I think, the motorcycle was cool, so...
I love that.
Yeah. And then, we spent the weekend camping, hanging out with friends. I don't even really think we connected a whole lot that trip. We were aware of each other's presence, but never really maybe had more than a hi, this is who I am, let me introduce myself. And then over time, I moved down to St. George and was going to school. Tommy came to visit a couple of times while he was in the area for some trainings he was doing for work. And we went on a couple of just grabbing lunch together, but we were both in separate relationships kind of at both of those times. So it's just friends catching up. And then we went on a camping trip to St. George. You guys came down for spring break. In what year was that? 2022,
I believe.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right. Because that was right before I graduated from college. They came down for a spring break trip, and something was a little different that trip. I think we've both talked about it kind of retrospectively of there was some sort of magnetic pull for most of that trip, and I very much felt it, and I think he did too. And one night we were hiking up what we called the Fairy Trail, which was this little tiny dirt trail up this hill over at the campground across from us, and it had these little solar lights all the way up, and there was a hammock up at the top. And we sat there and we were just chatting, and a couple of our friends were with us. And I went to get up and walk back down with the friends, and Tommy yanked me back down into the hammock. And I was like, okay, clearly I'm staying. So one of our friends kind of watched that interaction and got the hint and ushered all of our friends and was like, okay, kids, time to go. Let's let these kids have their time. And we spent most of that night just kind of, talking, processing. I had just gotten out of my last relationship.
We both were recently out.
Yeah, kind of processing through the breakups together. And then I think just chatting into the rest of the night, and we both kind of woke up the next morning and we're like, oh, there's something there.
Is there anything you would like to add, Tommy?
I think that pretty well covers all of it. Yeah, we kind of hit it off that night and talked till we were both most of the way asleep. And then finally, decided to call it a night and find our way back to bed. And then we went our separate ways after that trip ended. I came back up to Salt Lake. I had work that Monday, and I just kind of threw text kind of for the plot of hey, what if I rode back down and we went and got lunch and maybe went on a date for real.
Okay. And so how long did you guys date before making things official? Was it pretty quick after, or
I giggle because I will say friend zoned Tommy. I didn't really. I was still very much like acting as if we were dating. We were going on dates. We were seeing each other. But I was having a really hard time kind of trusting the next person that came into my life, because the relationship I was in before ours was really messy and toxic and not great. And so I felt like I was still carrying a lot of baggage from that and had a hard time letting somebody in, like to the point where I was seriously like, we're just friends, we're never gonna date. And then I was like so stubborn in that for so long and had so many conversations with my parents where they were like, Kate, just give him a chance. And I was like, no, I don't want anybody to love me.
Yep, for months.
So I would say probably 3 or 4 months before we finally made it official. Yeah, and that was a lot of back and forth and some big conversations of why I wasn't ready, and Tommy was, and he said, I'm gonna outwait you, and I said, okay, good luck.
And so you guys were long distance then for a little bit, like you were in St. George and Tommy, you were in Salt Lake here. How did you guys make that work? Because the journey from Salt Lake to St. George is not a short one. It's about 4 hours. It is. Like 4.5 hours. So like, because I feel like everyone's like, oh, be wary of long distance relationships. And like, I think just naturally, like as humans, it's hard to like feel connected to someone when you're so far away from each other. Yeah. But like also not far away enough where it's like a plane ride away. And so like there's like this weird like where do we go with this? So like what was that like for you guys?
That was a really big part of it, because it was kind of right on that edge of like realistic. It was a lot of days on my bike riding between Salt Lake and St. George. I probably went down half a dozen times or so.
Yeah, I would say so too.
And at the time, the job that I was working, I worked nights. And I was pretty autonomous at my job. Being on the night crew, I mostly worked by myself. So we spent the first, I don't know, that whole interim period and probably the first 8 months until we moved in together on the phone. Like I would get to work and we would just be on the phone through most of the evening.
Yeah, I was door dashing at the time. So he had the flexibility of being like on the phone at work, and I just would constantly have him like on my AirPods or in my car as I was driving to and from orders or restaurants.
And so what was that like trying to connect? Because I mean there is like that total emotional piece, and I think like this is what I've heard so many people say, and you've probably heard it as well, where it's like, oh, you get a great like emotional connection, but like sometimes like I would say like my biggest love language is like touch, in the sense of like just connecting and like having like a finger on someone. It's not necessarily
being able to poke them if you want them.
And it's not necessarily like the big whole like lovey-dovey stuff. It's just having like the other person
that
in
physical proximity. And that's a big thing for me too. And
so how did you guys work through that?
It was hard. Straight up, like it was not fun. And the 6 to 8 hour long conversations every day certainly helped.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think, while we were dating the whole time, kind of once we got consistent with it, I don't think I ever went 2 weeks without making a trip out.
Or vice versa. I think we were seeing kind of back and forth. Like Tommy would come out one weekend, and then 2 weeks later I'd come out to him, and we'd kind of swap back and forth. And so I think for Tommy that probably was a really big deal. My biggest love language is words of affirmation. So I was getting so much out of these like hour upon hour phone calls, because we were talking about everything under the sun. Like I felt like even though he was not physically there in my presence, like he was there in my brain. We were just constantly having those conversations. But I do think like it was hard, especially when we did get to see each other, because we had so much fun, and like you do get that physical connection and like seeing the person in front of your face that we didn't so often. And so it was always really hard to leave at the end of the weekend. I felt like, at least for me, that was the hardest part of I could like be excited up until I got to come visit you, and then we had to leave and we were like, oh, it's going to be another 2 weeks. And that was really hard.
Yeah, where I was working kind of a non-traditional schedule, I worked 4/10s.
Okay, yeah.
So I always had long weekends.
Yeah.
And I was relatively senior at my job, so I could take time off when I pretty well wanted to, and I had a ton built up. And so I could, if I realistically needed to, I just take an extra day, and then I get 4 days that I get to hang out.
Yeah.
While she was still in school.
Yeah.
Fun. So you guys have been together for like 3-ish years, and like obviously now you're living together and like you're heading towards marriage, which is yay, so exciting. And so like looking back on like your 3 years of relationship, what's something now that you appreciate about each other more than you did when you were first dating?
I have my answer. Do you want me to go first? I think because so early in the relationship, I was not really ready to be in a relationship, and it just kind of fell into my lap. I think Tommy is a very calm person. He's very like chill and grounding and like isn't rocked by very many things. And I feel like at first that was really scary to me because I'm very used to like, I don't know, men who do not regulate their emotions well, or maybe like a little explosive. And so I think I didn't understand at the time like how great it was going to be to have somebody in my life long term who, when something like that comes up, he is just so calm, like calm, cool, even, collected, and like doesn't panic. And so
I bet that took a lot of like learning where you're like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah. I joke actually pretty frequently about how the first like probably I'd say 4 or 5 months of the relationship, I couldn't tell if I was bored or if it was like just normal for relationships to feel that way.
Yeah.
Because I had been so used to chaos for so long. And so I really had to like fight through okay, you're not bored of this relationship, you're not bored of this person. Things are just very like calm, and you're not used to what that is. Because I think so much of what we're preached to about what love is like the big fireworks and the sparks and all of these huge like gestures and things. And while I think you do a good job of showing up those ways too, like it was very much for me getting used to like the quiet, calm presence and the love that showed up as later.
I love that. Tommy, what's your answer?
So that was a much more in-depth answer than, I mean, I guess I could have expected that.
It can be in-depth. It doesn't have to be like super deep.
I mean, I think this has kind of been a through line for me for our whole relationship is the fact of like how much depth Kate adds. You know, we talk about how, you know, we were on the phone for 5, 6, 8 hours a day. And we were just yapping on the whole time, just about everything. And that was so fun to get to just go through all of that with everyone and kind of pick apart someone else's brain. It's like, it's a lifelong podcast, essentially.
Yeah.
For what, the first 6-7 months of our relationship?
Sorry, I had to.
I had to.
Good. For those who weren't seeing that, I did the 6-7. I'm sorry.
My little brother would be so proud.
And so, like, how, like, I guess, like, going into families a little bit, like, because I love those answers, by the way, because I think a lot of the, like, foundation of your relationship really starts in those, like, first couple, like, that first year of being together. And that's why I always go with the rule of thumb of like trying to decide if like I want to be with someone for a long time is like 4 seasons and a road trip.
Yep. So accurate.
Because like you just have to see people in like so many different circumstances, and like,
Yeah.
but initially laying that groundwork of like a solid foundation
Mhm.
is honestly what takes the most effort.
Yeah.
I feel like. And so I kind of want to go into just like a little bit more sober of your guys' relationship. So you guys both, like, we talked about this before recording the podcast, but you guys both work in mental health fields in like obviously different capacities.
Yeah.
So how do you like, because you guys were also saying earlier, and like, which I really admire, is like you guys both work in mental health fields, like you let it affect your relationship in a positive manner.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I guess like, how has your communication been strengthened by the practices that you have in your jobs, or that you've just kind of observed over the years?
I think that's a really great question. I mean, for me, it all started kind of way before I even met Kate. Up until about 2020.
Yeah.
I never understood the concept that I was anxious. My brain did not even grasp what that emotion was.
Yeah.
And so I started going to therapy kind of towards the end of 2020. And that kind of just set off a whole journey of kind of relearning all of that. And that really laid for me a lot of the groundwork of like how to work through emotions and have hard conversations that feel uncomfortable, when so much before that I would just kind of shut down and disengage and kind of step back. And then those things would never get resolved.
Yeah.
To kind of jump ahead to our relationship, that, you know, shows up both in my job, of, you know, treating patients, because essentially I am the adult in the room. I might not have any idea what I'm doing, but everyone is looking at us as we are the adults in the room here to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And just take that minute and be like, we can figure this out. You just got to kind of take a breath and work through it one thing at a time. And like with us, that was a big part of what those early day conversations centered around, was our working through a lot of those emotions that had been just kind of stuffed in a closet for, you know, the better part of a decade. How high school and college are rough.
Yeah.
And so many people go through it and they just stuff it all under a rug and eventually hope that they can buy another rug to put the rest under. And life goes a lot more smoothly if you start unpacking what's under the rug.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't necessarily go away, but if you can kind of organize it, the rug gets a lot less lumpy and you trip a lot less.
Yeah. I like that analogy. And so like, how have you guys kind of like weaved that into your relationship? Because I think, I don't know, it's so tricky where it's like, don't take your like, and maybe like this is just my brain saying this, and I'm sure it's been said other places, it's like leave what you do at work and come home and like just kind of don't give your spouse the leftovers. But honestly, leftovers are great.
Yeah, I agree. They heat up just fine.
They heat up just fine. And like, honestly, like that's what you're going to get day in and day out, because you guys are like, you guys have separate jobs. Like I've had couples that are like, that they work together. So like they're with each other 24/7. And like those couples just kind of like share everything. But like, especially when you get home after like a really rough day, you just have the leftovers. And so how do you guys like, I feel like leftovers is like the wrong term because I love leftovers so much.
I know exactly what you're after.
But like, you guys know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely one of those things where we do bring the leftovers home in the people field, especially when you're dealing so strictly with like mental health, or like in Tommy's case, seeing some people in some really like upsetting visual ways, you know?
Yeah.
that stuff just makes an impact on your brain because we are humans and we're affected by other people. We have that empathy for other people. But I think the beauty of that is we understand each other so much more because of that. Not only do we both have such like high, I guess, volumes of empathy for other people, but I think that bleeds over into empathy for each other as well. And like an understanding of, my job is really hard a lot of the time, and so is yours. And like, we're going to have days where we just can't like super show up for each other sometimes. And I think that was a bit of a learning curve for us at first as we were like moving in together and trying to adjust to that schedule. But it's very much become a thing where I feel like I can come home and be like, yeah, I'm carrying a lot of baggage today. Like, I can't show up tonight. I need you to make dinner or we're getting takeout. And then I'm literally just laying on the couch and I need to probably just not talk for the rest of the night. And he gets that because he has days where he comes home and feels like that too. Or I think the other days where we need to come home and talk about it, like we just have that capacity where other people maybe don't if you don't work in the same field that way. Because I've talked a lot about like other friends. I've got a friend that works in like CPS and whatnot. And
I bet that's really hard.
Yeah. People that don't work in those fields where it's such heavy stuff day in and day out, that can feel really overwhelming to them if you're like talking like about your Tuesday, you know, and you're like, yeah, I just had to go to court for this mom and this kid that now can't be reunited. Like, that's really hard. Yeah. But I think for us, we just get that with each other. And so it just makes a little bit more sense. And it doesn't feel like we're, I guess, unpacking or burdening it. We kind of get to be each other's therapist that way in like a healthy way.
I love that. And so how do you, because like, and I think that's beautiful and I'm not like trying to diminish it in any way. It's like, how do you guys get there? Because like everyone's like, oh, great, communication and like talking about it. But like, and I've had and I've had so many couples in my life where it's like communication is key. And like one of my podcasts that I listen to is like, yeah, you just got to communicate with each other. And I'm like,
how
though? Like give me a formula. Like I'm a very like even though I never like I stopped like math at like the first college algebra class or like trigonometry, like that was it for me. Like even though, and like don't get me wrong, I love math, but like not what I wanted to study in college. But like I feel like I'm such like a formula oriented I have a formula oriented mind where I'm like I need like the hows, who's, what's, when's of like this. And so like obviously you don't have to give the who, how, when, what, but like how, it's more so just like the how of like what do you say to each other? Like, do you put on party hats when you're feeling really down, or like, and you need to have a more serious conversation where it's like, hey, can you please pick up your socks or something like, or it's like when you're like in those super tense moments, what do you guys do to like communicate with each other?
Yeah.
A lot.
Where did we start?
We started, honestly, it started from that first trip to St. George. While we were down there with all of our friends, this one and one of our really good friends decided it was a great idea to go jump off of Gunlock Waterfalls.
Which is not.
There was a bunch of college boys hanging out on the top of the falls, just peacocking, flexing, thinking they were tough.
Nobody jumped.
They're
just standing there flexing.
Like, they'd run up to the edge and they'd stop. So the two of them went up there and just right over the edge.
Okay.
And a big thing early on, as we were working through both of our emotions, kind of working through our pasts together, we started kind of finding these little kind of prepositional statements. Because she and I have two pretty different communication styles. Yeah. I'm pretty scattered. I always giggle that my my therapist told me that essentially what good does an ADHD diagnosis do me? And I'm like, it's a fair point.
It's all the same.
It's all the same. I'm not going to do anything about it. It just is it just is what it is.
Yeah.
But early on, what we started using was I think the first one we had was before we said something that might be upsetting or cause someone to kind of jump to a conclusion because it's kind of a like reality statement. We would start with saying like, don't slip, kind of in reference to that water, don't slip off the waterfall and dive off into the into the assumptions, into the conclusions. Before we've had a chance to kind of work through this and talk about it. And that helps stop what, a lot of times in previous relationships would have immediately become a fight. Because it's like,
it lets you brace, like your body is prepared of like, oh, this is gonna maybe be uncomfortable.
And because life is uncomfortable, there's no two ways about it. And it's so much easier to go through with someone, and that really set us a foundation of us versus whatever the problem is, rather than us going at one another because our emotions are high and we're both feeling things because someone says something, and then it's just this back and forth kind of tit for tat, and you never get anywhere. It just stops that before you even get there, to where you can kind of dissect it and talk about feelings as they come up, so that you're not trying to bulldoze the other person, and you can both have space to talk about it as you work through whatever the topic is.
I think the other thing too, in just the like formula mindset, is so many people go into relationships with like, if it's the right relationship, it'll feel easy. I completely disagree with that. Like, the first 4 or 5 months of our relationship was some of the most uncomfortable I have ever been, because I had to sit with myself and a mirror at me of like, where do I need to work on my communication? What things do I still have to process? And I think a lot of the communication begins with being willing to be uncomfortable and just know that like, this is not going to be a fun process, but it is worth it in the end and where we can get to.
Wow. I love that. Chills. It sounds like you guys have like a really like solid foundation for your marriage, because it's obviously it's not just like the 4 to 5 months that like you were like, oh, 4 to 5 months. I'm done. But it's like, it's really built over a lifetime. And a lot of like the couples that I've talked to previously, they're like, yeah, like it's like, even when we're 20 years into marriage, like it's still a process of learning how to talk to each other. And so speaking of marriage, I'm really, really excited about this topic, because I think not necessarily that people are hesitant to get married, and like, because I don't want this conversation to come off that way, but like, I feel like people are a lot more hesitant to like take that step of commitment.
Absolutely.
And so what was your guys' decision on that? Like, what did your decision on that look like? Because I think people are like, oh, like it's just a piece of paper or whatever. And like, to be fair, it kind of is.
Yeah, it is, but it isn't. It's also a lifelong commitment to this person.
Yeah. And so like, because it sounds like you guys have like that shared value of like, you wanted to get married, and it wasn't like because it's I don't know, it's the whole thing. But like, what was your guys' step towards that?
I think I don't know. This one's hard because I think there was a lot, right? I think it's a lot of our background and the ways that we grew in the relationship. And for me, it was the safety that Tommy cultivated for me, to feel like I could be vulnerable, to feel like I could be emotional, to not ever feel like I was too much, like the reassurance that I was accepted for exactly who I was. But I think some of the first steps we took that way was we were just very open about it, of like, what is your goal? Like, where do you see this relationship going? What do you want out of this relationship? Having those very open, honest, and direct conversations of like, is being engaged something we want to be? Is being married something we want to be? Do we want to be long-term partners? And I think because of all of the really in-depth conversation we had early on, it made those conversations feel not so big and not so scary, because we had already really talked about not marriage specifically, but a lot of other topics. But I'll say, even for me, like, the idea, I had never really pictured myself as somebody who would get married. Like, I had just expected to be in like a really long-term partnership, and like that would be enough for me. And then I felt like with Tommy, and once we were talking about it, I was like, oh no, like, I want to be tied to this person for the rest of my life. Like, I have seen so much of him at this point. I have seen the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And like, I would still choose him every day. And so I think I went in with just the like mindset of, I want to choose you in every scenario. And that probably means that like being married would be kind of cool, because then it's just like, we're kind of in it for life, and it's that commitment that we make to each other. And I think, I don't know, just something we can kind of fall back onto. I don't necessarily see marriage as like, marriage or not marriage as an option for me. The fact that I've committed to this means that I'm all in, right? I don't want to do this again. I don't want to plan another wedding. I don't want to do this all over again. Like, I don't want to answer what my favorite color is one more time, you know? So
yeah.
Which cracks me up that you say that. That was the first question that she told me I wasn't allowed to ask her.
Okay.
That was immediately the first question I had to ask her. I don't make the rules. That's just how it is.
Before you answer that question, Tommy, what is your favorite color?
It's yellow.
Yellow.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
I think as far as marriage, I mean, I think, you know, there's been a generational shift, you know, with Gen Z and with just kind of the state of everything. Like, I think marriage, especially in Western culture, has kind of taken on a different shape. And with Kate, for me, it was that it's her and I against the world, however that plays out. And so, you know, kind of the convention for that is that we get married.
Yeah.
And how fun, you know, because like we've all said, like, you know, a lifelong partnership can just be that. You know, you don't have to have a ring, you don't have to have a piece of paper, but also it's part of the journey together. It's part of the experience, and it is kind of a codifying of that commitment.
Wow. I don't know what that word means, but that sounds great.
Welcome to the first, like, probably year of our relationship where he'd say all these big words, and I was like over the phone Googling what they meant.
So what does codifying mean?
Just like it is now a permanent, like,
okay.
We have the paper, we have the rings. This is a thing. We have done it.
We've invested time, tears, sweat, money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I was over here, I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful statement. And so like now that like makes it more sense in my brain. I wanted to ask you guys, like, with being married, what are you guys looking forward to in like the future of like just kind of like, are you guys gonna be like traveling, maybe like moving out of Utah? Like, what are your guys's like what are you guys looking forward to in the next, let's say, 5 years of your marriage?
Yeah.
I mean, I think this has been a big plan of like what we've been spending a lot of this year and the end of last year kind of deciding of what's next.
Yeah.
I got done with my bachelor's last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So glad I'm done. I have enough pieces of paper that say I know things. We're good. I say that now. Famous last words. I'll probably go get more.
He will.
Same with her. But I mean, you know, that's a big exciting part is like, what is next? You know, so it's such a big thing for the last, you know, 18 months now has been planning the wedding, you know, putting that all on ourselves. And now it's like, cool. Now what?
Yeah.
Are we, you know, are we going to stay in Utah? Are we going to go travel the world? Are we going to go, you know, start over somewhere? Are we going to keep doing what we've been doing? It's kind of the exciting part of what we get to figure out now.
Yeah.
And for me, like, that is the thing that I want. For me, it, you know, not to be corny, but like it is the journey. Yeah. The destination is just the happy outcome.
Yeah.
Home is wherever he is. So we'll figure that out.
Well, shucks, that's going to make me cry.
Because like we started out doing long distance, and I'm gone for 2 full days every 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of continuing long distance.
So we still kind of do long distance to an extent. And so, home is wherever we are together. And that might be at the house we live at now. That might be, we're in the middle of the desert for a week. It might be we're on the Oregon coast. It might be who knows where's next.
I think so much of our relationship has kind of been, for lack of better words, by the seat of our pants, because he was the relationship I never saw coming. And if I had sworn I would never live in Salt Lake, and here I've been for the last 2 years. And so I think a lot of it has been so unexpected that we sit down and we'll goal plan for the next year or so. But sometimes we have a hard time coming up with a 5-year plan, because both of us had no idea this is where we would be 5 years ago.
Gotcha.
And then kind of planning the next 5 years. Obviously we have some goals of, I'm looking into maybe going back to school, and he's really kind of growing in his career. And we've talked about maybe moving to the PNW potentially. But also we just bought this fun little camper thing that we take out for weeks or weekends at a time, and traveling is such a big deal for us. So we've got a Great Dane dog that comes with us every day. So
he looks like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
The perfect world for me is just me, you, and the dog, and wherever we are.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. I kind of wanted to one last reflecting question, and then we'll maybe wrap things up. But how has your guys' understanding of love changed over your relationship?
That's a good question.
That is a fantastic
And
question.
because I don't know, people have their quirks, and you have to learn new ways of loving over a long period of time. Regardless of what relationship, and whether it's big fireworks or whether it's just little day-to-day moments, there are moments where you're really with your partner. And so how have you guys how has your understanding of love changed through those quirky moments?
I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to quantify love. But I think the way that it's changed for me the most and really solidified is that it is a continued choice. There's obviously the emotional side. I love her. I like so many things about her. I like spending time with her. I like going to do all the silly little things. And there's the big things, there's the little things, there's the things that only I know. That is a great part of why I feel so lucky to be her partner. But it really shows up for me on the bad days, when I've had a rough night, or I've had a call that went not at all how I wanted to, or, I see things that, no one wants to.
Yeah. Or horrific, I'm sure.
And to have that place to come home and land and to be received, and have that place to be safe. There's seldom words for it. It is the embodiment to care for somebody, to be that place when things go bad, to have to come back to.
I think kind of to jump off of that, I think it kind of comes back to it kind of comes back to relationships are not easy all of the time. I think so often it's preached to us that a relationship should look a certain way, or we should pedestal certain relationships. And I think our relationship is work a lot of the time, and that's totally okay. I think we both navigate that with such grace a lot of the time, because we just hold the love for each other in the same hand, right? So you can have the difficult conversation, and you can be triggered, and it can be really not fun sometimes, and you can still choose to love the other person through all of that. And I think he chooses to love me that way so much of the time, but then also feeling like I'm choosing to love him when he's in the same boat, right? So I think it's the biggest thing it has taught me is just that love is choosing each other, and it's choosing the good and the bad. And even when it's bad, I look at him and I still feel so much love. And so, you know, how could it not just be this beautiful adventure we get to choose each other every day?
Well, shoot darn. I'm just like, wow, that's beautiful. Because like, I think there's so many opportunities to just say like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Or say like, oh, this is like too heavy for me to handle. But like, I don't know, as like someone where you're committing to for a whole lifetime, it really takes the choosing those heavy days. And like, obviously like there are happy days in there, but there are like, it's those moments of like choosing when it's really ugly.
Yeah. We choose our hard, and he is a hard I will choose
that is
every day.
a big thing that I picked up from one of my coworkers that stuck with me from the day she said it, is that we in life choose our hard.
Yeah.
Of course, there's the things that we have given to us that we might not have a choice in. But in the day-to-day, the decisions we make is the hard we choose.
Yeah.
And that transfers over to relationships. You know, your relationship is only as deep as you're willing to put in the work for.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant.
Sitting with yourself.
And you have to learn to sit in it. Because if you don't, you'll run from it and you won't get anywhere.
Yeah. Ooh, I got goosebumps with that. Okay, but again, thank you guys for coming on. I loved all that we talked about, just kind of like choosing what hard and choosing the hard, and also just learning how to like communicate with each other, especially during those heavy times, because those are very important things to learn from a relationship, because like it's just what you're gonna have to learn.
Yep.
And so I'm so excited for you guys to get married and to go on travels and adventures, and especially with your Great Dane.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so jealous that does he like actually look like Scooby-Doo?
Yeah, I'll show you a picture afterwards.
Okay, great. Yes. I'm so excited. I did want to finish up with a couple of questions. These are questions that I ask every guest on this podcast, and they're reflective / advice questions for our listeners. They are a little bit deep, so I just like, as a warning,
we're ready.
It's like our forte.
I agree.
So like, obviously we've kind of had a conversation about like your prospective fields that you work in, and like how sometimes when things get hard like that, you guys kind of hold each other in that hurt a little bit. But what's like one core reason, that one thing about your partner in your life together that makes giving up not an option for you?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
I think for me, I really like the statement that giving up is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
Because that has been a big through line for my own just mental health journey.
Mm-hmm.
That giving up is not an option. Again, with the field that I work in, suicide is something that we see pretty regularly, and so giving up is not an option.
Yeah.
And I apply that to my partner the same way, because for me, that is such a big part of my life that feels like giving up on a part of my life.
Yeah.
And as long as the relationship is healthy and it is supporting me and supporting my partner, I would see continuing that relationship to be a good thing, and that giving up over something small like a disagreement, or as we like to giggle about, we call it the butter dish. I, at one point, told her to please stop putting the knife on top of the butter dish after it's been used, because I am very particular sometimes.
And then
it is a
immediately
curse of mine.
to do what?
I also then left it on top of the butter dish. So there is that. But I think almost the absurdity of that gives that contrast that giving up is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
And to put it in that absurd mindset of like, would I give this all away because I wouldn't put the knife in the sink? Seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think for me, something I read recently that really rang true is that I am marrying him because of all of the good, right? Like you're picking this person because you see so many great aspects, and you're marrying each other for the joy and all of the excitement. But the reason why Tommy will be my partner through and through is because in my very worst moments, he is the person that brings me comfort. And so I think it's knowing that this is a partner that I'm going to have to go through grief with. I'm going to have to go through my parents' death with. I'm going to have to lose my dog and somehow make it through that. And there is nobody that I have more faith in to be my rock in that than I do with him. So I think giving up is not an option for me, because I know that just having him next to me is going to make it a little easier.
I love that. Oh, you guys have just said some good things where I'm like, chills. We just I don't even have to say anything. And so obviously, like, kind of at the beginning of your relationship, it was a little messy trying to figure out long distance.
And me trying to figure it out.
And so, like, those moments in relationships can be like super messy and just kind of like they take work to figure out. Like those, like, I wouldn't say like the relationship like itself is messy, but just like the situations surrounding relationships, just it's easy to get messy. And so what's that one practice or mindset that you guys do to help stay connected in those times where you feel disconnected?
I think I will say it really boils down to it's not that serious. I think so many of the times where we get in like some silly little like tiff or part of conflict, we just sit there and we like giggle about it and just like turn it into a funny thing. Like we really do have all of these stories of like butter knife on the butter dish and so many other things where I think it's frustrating at first, but he and I love each other and respect each other enough to get to a point where we can just laugh about it. And then neither of us remember what we're arguing about or any of those things, you know? So I think it's remembering that humans are just generically messy and that it's kind of funny that we're like that.
Yeah.
I think one of the silliest things that she's brought home was this idea of silly little humans.
Yes. It's a mantra right now.
And sometimes you just need to take a current situation and like, if you were a space alien looking at the situation right now, what would you think? These people are sitting here on the couch arguing about you didn't take the trash out. Okay, you know, or like here we are sitting in a room having a conversation for strangers to go listen to by themselves on the internet or maybe with some friends.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a silly little humans thing that it's just the way we do it. I mean, as far as like how we stay connected during those times, trying to reincorporate a little physical touch is great. It's good for the nervous system. It's good for cooling down the temperature of the conversation, even if it's just like you just touch toes and you're on opposite sides of the couch. just that little bit to just kind of diffuse the situation, because it really is a lot of the times not that serious.
Yeah.
You know, like obviously there's deal breakers and whatnot, but like outside of that, it's probably really not that serious.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to think about it in 2-3 days a week, it's really not that serious.
Yeah.
And reframing that it's you and your partner versus the problem. Yeah. It's not me versus her.
It's not my messy versus yours.
Yeah. I love that. And like, even though like that phrase is so cliche, it's rang true, I think, in every relationship that I've watched. And it's like, there's like, and when people make it like a me versus you competition, that's when things get complicated. And like, that's when things kind of like, I want to like, well, they eventually start to crumble, but like, it's more so of an erosion type situation.
Resentment, all of that builds up.
Mm-hmm. And so, kind of wrapping things up here. My last question for you guys, it's a bit of a doozy.
Ready.
So knowing what you know now, what is one thing you wish you could tell yourself on the day your relationship first began?
Ooh.
I mean, it's kind of funny because I did kind of tell myself this on the first day.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I'm doing this for the plot.
He did.
I was like, this might blow up horribly. I'm about to ride, almost 10 hours round trip to go hang out with this girl. This could either go great or it could go terrible. Either way, I'll have a good story. And here I am 3 years later with a library of stories. So yeah, I would say buckle up.
Oh man, I think mine comes back to what we've kind of already talked about, is I would tell myself that just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think so often we take our emotions and feelings as fact, and while our emotions and feelings are valid, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always right. I think you said that to me recently. Because if I had listened to all of the alarm bells going off in my brain and my body instead of like sitting with it and just being uncomfortable, we would have never gotten here. So I think I'd say, even when the sirens are blaring, sit down, shut up, and listen to what they have to tell you.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you guys again for coming on the podcast. I think sometimes like relationships can be like such an overwhelming thing, and like a lot of people are like, oh, I have to do it like absolutely perfect or no one's gonna want me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not necessarily like my friends think that way, but like a lot of people that like I'm in circles with, like there's a lot of like voice of like, oh, if I don't like, if he doesn't do this perfectly, then I'm out. Or if she doesn't like my video games, then I'm out. And I think what you guys have shown today is like those like every relationship is gonna have its like ups and downs and like just different things, but like it's about what heart do you choose, and what things, like what core values do you guys share that you can take and like hold each other's hands and like run with together. So thank you guys again so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. We'll maybe have to do another episode after you guys get married.
That would be so fun.
So thanks for celebrating this year with us. Anniversaries aren't just about how long you've lasted, they're about how you've grown. Whether you're married, dating, single, or somewhere in between, I hope this conversation inspires you to reflect on what you're building and to remember that love is less about perfection and more about intention. Another year, another layer, another opportunity to choose each other. And if you know a couple whose story should be celebrated, I would love to meet them. Send this episode their way and have them fill out the link in the description below so we can celebrate their next anniversary too. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.